everyone. Welcome back to Chapter 7, the finale of The Bodyguard and the Courtesan. I hope that you are enjoying the series. Halloween is next month, so I just want to send a reminder to you that if you have a scary story you'd like to share with me, please submit it to the email in the description box. Next month will be a horror fest all month long, and I hope that you tune in. For now, I invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the finale of the story. Father, Samara said as he entered the prison. His eyes held a sad gaze, and he looked pale to the face. She lowered her eyes and felt the hot tears run down her cheeks. He reached for her hands through the iron bars, and she looked up at him. I have begged and pleaded with the king to no end, my dearest. I am afraid I have done and spoken all I can, Douglas whispered. What shall I do now? Nothing, she said gently. Just promise me something. Anything. Do not come watch this afternoon. I would much rather you remember my birth than my death, Father. He let out a sob. Dearest, why did you commit such a crime? Why could you not endure the pain just a bit? Smiling through tears, she asked, Can anyone endure when it comes to the person they love? Can they? I have tried my hardest to make him see me, but his eyes were blind this whole time. All he saw was her, and I had to take her out of this world. I had to, if I wanted to be happy. Samara, you have always been too bold for anyone. I was born bold, and I would die bold. Two guards entered, and Waylon followed behind them. Douglas turned and looked at him with hatred in his eyes, his shoulders heaving up and down from the anger he had within him. The guards came to open the gate and pulled her out, holding each of her arms. This is your bride, Douglas cried. How can you let this happen? Waylon looked at him. She is no longer my bride, and she chose her own path. If she had been a little bit gentler and kinder, perhaps I would feel some sympathy for her. But her heart is made of stone, and she has nothing to pity. Father, Samara said, it is worthless speaking to him. He is not even a man. The guards pushed her forward, and they brought her out as Douglas stayed behind and fell to his knees. The crowd had gathered in the street as Samara was forced down on her knees. She turned to find Waylon standing next to her, his eyes full of hate. She smiled up at him, and then lifted her eyes to the sun. It is a glorious day to die, my lord, for us both. You have lost completely, even if you do not wish to admit it. The king has denied you everything you ever wanted. I shall die a happy death, knowing you will weep in your dreams. Waylon did not answer her, and only signaled with a nod of his head. He watched as she remained staring at him, her eyes wide open as the sword struck down on her neck, loosening her head, and it rolled to his feet, where her eyes still opened, holding the last gaze for him. The chamber Maisie sat in with the lady in waiting, brushing her hair, was the grandest chamber she had ever been in. Silk covered her body and her lobes dangled with jewelry made from Egypt that were imported from the king. Everything was so beautiful, and yet she felt as if she had been robbed of life. She had heard from the servants speaking that Samara had been beheaded earlier today, and she felt a sense of peace knowing that the woman behind Kaiden's death was now gone. The moment she entered the palace, the first person she saw was Waylon standing on guard. She had tried to maintain her walk and not slip, but a moment passed him, and she was already searching for his presence. The king had brought her to this chamber and spent the night with her, making love and claiming her body as his concubine. The queen had been absent from the arrival of her, and word had it that she had left to spend a few months in Italy with her family. She was alone in this palace with the king and a man she could no longer love. "My lady, you are set. The king awaits your arrival for breakfast," the maid said behind her. She'd already forgotten the poor girl's name, and so she simply smiled and walked out of the chamber. She found the king sitting at the table being served porridge and tea. He looked up and smiled at her. "My lady, you have arrived. You must be famished. Come, eat." Maisie sat down next to him and was served food immediately. She picked up the spoon and tried it, tasting the flavorful burst of sweetness on her tongue. But her heart was hollow, and she forced a smile. "I would like you to choose some fabrics for dresses today. With the queen absent, I shall have you accompany me to the banquets many of my people are throwing. I would like you to look the part of my concubine. Later today, I will have someone come teach you the entrance and exit guidelines." She looked up at him. "There is such a thing as that?" "Yes," King Cassius said. "Waylon is good at it, as he has been with me the longest. I shall have him come to you." Maisie felt as if this was a test. "My lord, I thought it would be a woman." Laughing, he replied, "Women teach only the table manners. When it comes to safety of exits and entrances, it is my bodyguards who know best. Do you have a problem with Waylon?" She shook her head. "Of course not. I know what your relationship is with him. He knows what he can and cannot do. If you think of seducing him beneath my nose, you will find that he is loyal to me and none other." Maisie gave him a weak smile. "I had never thought of seducing another man in your presence, my king. All of me now belongs only to you." "Good," he said with a smile. "Prepare later for his arrival. Eat." Maisie picked up her spoon and began eating, only because she had been ordered to. He was quiet after, and she forced the food to go down her throat. Life in the palace was worse than being in the brothel.
Take me on a spree. I wanna get to know me, every little inch of me. Gentle while you stroke, when you picture me, every number count.
Waylon entered the study hall to find Maisie sitting, waiting for him, dressed like a lady. Her hair had been pinned up and away from her face. He lowered his eyes and dropped to one knee, greeting her as per protocol. "My lady, I am here at the king's request." "You may rise," she whispered. He did as told and walked to where she sat. Exits are a hidden tool in the palace halls. They are kept hidden, so if anyone's safety was threatened, they can escape easily. "Will you pretend as if I am not someone you know intimately?" Maisie asked suddenly as she stood. "Since you have walked in here, the light in your eyes have dimmed." He ignored her. "It is crucial for you to learn where these exits are and how to access them. If at any time there is a threat to your safety, you can arrive there without harm." "Answer me!" she cried. "Why are you treating me as if you have never known me before?" He adjusted his eyes and lowered them to the ground. "My lady, I am here on safety protocols for you and nothing else. I know nothing about what you speak of." She let out a small gasp and stumbled backward. "You are not a man." He remained silent as she pushed him away. "You are a coward. You have shared my bed countless times, and yet when you stand among the king, you cower away like a little ant. You cannot even protect me." Waylon kicked a stool and it crashed into the corner as he breathed deeply. "You do not know what I am enduring right now. The pain of seeing you, and yet I cannot even touch you. I am put in a position where I must watch another man love the woman I desire. You know nothing of how I truly feel, so do not assume, my lady. I am near death every time I am close to you, and yet I cannot do anything." She let out a frustrated scream and came to hug him. He tried to push her away, but she held on to him. "Do not push me away," she whispered. "I need this. I need you. I do not care if I am ordered to be killed. I choose you, my lord." He shut his eyes as the tears squeezed through, and suddenly his hands came to hold her. The pain he felt was released as he gasped loudly and felt his heart pound beneath his chest. "I would rather choose death than to live another day without you." "Then perhaps I can make that happen," King Cassia's voice said from behind them. They both turned to find the king entering with the royal guards beside him. Waylon reached out a hand to steady Maisie's shaking arm. "You dare to disobey my orders? You, a tiny little guard that I felt pity to take under my wing. You stand today because I chose to pluck you from death," the king said. "My king," Maisie said as she stepped forward. "And you," King Cassius said as he pointed a finger at her. "You are a witch. The power you have over me is a spell, and you have woven me into a dark corner, making me forget my queen, forgetting everything but you. What sorcery do you use on me?" She shook her head. "None, my king. I will gladly disappear from your life as long as you allow me to take Waylon with me." Laughing, the king replied, "Do you think it would be that easy to walk away from this after committing such a crime? You belong to me. I have given your name to the heavens and earth as my concubine, and until I die, you shall remain mine. Anyone who dares to touch you shall meet the end of my sword and their head on a pike. I shall let the vultures feed on your eyes and tongue and let you roam the underworld deaf and blind." Waylon lowered his head. "My king, I apologize." Then he looked up at him square in the eyes. "You have given me a life many have envied. I thank you for that. But today, my heart is no longer alive because I have lost the woman I love. I cannot serve you with loyalty like I have done in the past. My heart cannot take this task on without murdering my own self." The king laughed. "Are you prepared to take on this journey with me, Waylon? If you do, you shall never be able to return." "I am," Waylon said gently. "I choose her." King Cassius glared at them. "Fine. You forced my hand." "Fire!" The guards beside him loaded their arrows, and Waylon ran to cover Maisie as they flew. The impact of it sent him to his knees as the pains shot through his body. She shoved him off of her and took one to her shoulder and two to her chest. The king shouted for the guards to stop, and she fell into his arms trembling. He walked to them and lowered himself to the ground. "You both have my full permission to be together, united until your breath stops," the king whispered as he stood and walked out. Waylon turned to find Maisie shaking beside him, her body bleeding, and he reached out a hand to her. She took it, and he gently pulled her into his arms. "My lord," she whispered softly, "I have dreamed of being with you freely every day since the day I met you. Today, I have that chance." He kissed her head gently and let out a soft chuckle. "Tell me, my lady, how do you envision our future? Together, on a small cottage farm where we will grow wild daisies and have a plantation of rice. You and I can sit underneath the oak tree and watch our children play in the yard." He smiled. "Sounds lovely." She gasped and tightened her hand on his. He wrapped his arms around her. "It's going to hurt, taking your last breath, but do not be afraid. I am right here beside you. I will walk with you toward the sun. My one true love, I will walk with you until the end of time." Thank you, everyone, for joining me for the finale of The Bodyguard and the Courtesan. I hope that you enjoyed this series. And again, be sure to tune in next month for Horror Fest all month long.